Okay, and we're live. So thanks for joining me, Sam. This is not really the setting that I was hoping to be doing the first few of these sort of podcasts and YouTube videos on. But, desperate times, desperate measures. It's certainly not for those watching on YouTube, it's certainly not the haircut that I would have expected to have. But a lot of us are struggling with our coronavirus haircuts at the moment. But I think probably the only thing I haven't said in the intro, Sam, is how you and I first sort of encountered each other, other than LinkedIn, which was right at the start of this coronavirus crisis, really, where I think there were a load of us scrambling around before the governing bodies sort of got into gear, and just trying to get information and trying to share ideas of how on earth we sort of deal with these unprecedented times. So. We set up a sort of impromptu Zoom meeting, didn't we? We had a couple of you from the sort of digital world with a golf background, and we had a few golf club managers, and there were a couple of people on there from various sort of golf-related backgrounds. We had a good old chat, really, and I think that conversation sort of kept me going for about a week until more formal things started to come out. But I mean, coronavirus lockdown-wise, how's it been going for you? I mean, I know obviously I know that it's affected your work life in the short term, but how's it been going? What's happened with you?
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting us on to the New Rules podcast. Excited to come on and speak to you today. So, as you say, I've been furloughed from my job, so I'm on today in sort of a personal capacity, I suppose, as a really keen golfer and as someone that really does study the golf industry and everything else. Fortunately, the weather's been nice, so that's been keeping me busy. I've got myself a golf net and a bit of chipping net in the garden, so that's been keeping me entertained for the last few weeks. And I think, as I've sort of spoken to a few people and sort of mentioned, is a lot of the time that I've been using is just trying to research really around what kind of happens to the golf industry when we go into things like recession or economic downturn and stuff like that, just to try and get a bit of an understanding of how we can help golfers when we come out the other side, but also just trying to get my own mind straight in terms of what innovations might happen and how we can, or how I can help the golf industry when we do come out the other side of it. So I've been keeping myself busy, reading a few books as well, and business books and stuff like that. It's not been too bad. I'm still sane at the moment.
So you said that you're one of these guys who set these nets up in the garden. Are you one of these guys who's could be posting a disaster movie on Twitter in the next couple of weeks? Because I've seen some shockers so far.
Well, there is every chance of that. I've got away with it so far, but what I didn't realise is that I ordered a kid's golf net instead of a proper one. So it's about 3 foot high. So get me on a links golf course when this is all over. My punch shots and my stings are looking pretty good. But no, I've put a nice thick bed sheet in behind it just to make sure if it does go through the net, it doesn't kill one of the neighbours. So I'm quite a handy golfer, so I've managed to keep it in the confines of the net so far.
Well, yeah, I'm probably judging you on my own standards there, aren't I? I daren't put something in my garden. I dread to think what would happen at the end of it. But yeah, I think it would be. I think that could be a disaster waiting to happen. But,
I've got away with it.
I've seen some shockers on Twitter, and it's not people shanking. It's sort of people just roughly putting like a bed sheet or something like that over an open garage door, and just expecting this bed sheet to catch the thing. And you're thinking, what could go wrong there, eh? But, it's been an experience. That's for sure. And there's been a lot of humour online, isn't there, as well, about things that people are going through in this crisis. And I do, from my own personal experience, I think you're seeing the best of the good things in the golf industry, and maybe those that are not so good at the moment are maybe lagging behind a bit. You've obviously had a bit more time to sit and reflect and think, because that's essentially what you're trying to use this time to do.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I've never, I've opened new build leisure facilities in my life, and I've never worked hours like this. So planning stuff like that is probably not something I'd be bragging about doing at the moment, because I wouldn't be doing it. Yeah. What do you think when we get out of this, the challenges in the middle to long term the clubs are going to have. At the moment, we're talking about, do we put with the flag, do we put flags in, and do we rate the bunkers? But the sort of, you've been a golf club manager of a couple of clubs now. You obviously work in the more, the digital and strategic marketing side of things. What do you think the challenges the clubs are going to be?
Well, I think, it's, to be quite honest, I don't really envy, the club management fraternity at the moment. I think there's so much going on and so much difficulty in terms of, just the uncertainty of it all, really, is to, we've no idea when we're going to get back to playing golf, no idea what that is actually going to look like. I think the rules have maybe become a little bit clearer today with some publications that have come out from the associations. But I think, the big thing that I see for golf clubs coming out the other side of it is just trying to mitigate that short-term loss of income, basically, and trying to keep cash flow going, trying to keep the club, up to scratch and keep the course at the standard that, everybody expects, really. Because I know that if we can make some more long-term strategies and plans that will actually allow us to sort of balance out the loss of what's happened over the last few months across a longer period of time, then, golf clubs have got every chance of being able to recover that revenue that they've lost. But they've got to keep the golf club going in the short and medium term to give themselves a chance of doing that, really. So, I think obviously membership's going to be a big challenge, particularly if we do go into recession. Golfers themselves, and I think I put out or said something about a stat that I saw the other day that golfers spent 18% less on their golf following the 2008 recession. So if revenues are potentially going to go down by that kind of amount, then golf clubs are really going to have to think strategically about their pricing, their products, maybe about their sort of customer service that they deliver as well, because I think that's probably going to be one big thing that a lot of golf clubs can do around this is really have a think about how they treat their customers when they come on site, because they're going to have to go a little bit above and beyond in the short term to keep things like social distancing in place and to make sure that they're keeping their members, their visitors, their staff as safe as possible. But that doesn't mean that you can't deliver a different kind of service or something that goes a little bit above and beyond, which in the medium term and the long term, hopefully will allow golf clubs to retain the prices that they've got, if not increase those prices a little bit. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of decisions to be made, and again, I say it's really difficult at the moment just because of the uncertainty of everything. But I believe that these are the kind of things that golf clubs should be thinking about, and particularly, like I say, on that customer service side of things. I think if you can try and make yourself stand out from the crowd a little bit on that, then hopefully you can command more golfers, more members, and retain your price if we do go into an economic downturn.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a question that we're going to end up in a recession. How deep that will be is to be seen, isn't it? But was the economic crash of 2008 before your time as a golf club GM? Did you come in just after it?
Yeah, so actually, I was working in the financial services industry when that crash happened. It wasn't my responsibility.
It was your fault then. Your fault.
It was just a pensions company, but it was, I think I did see the impact that it had on my working life when I was around that sort of time. I was studying to be an accountant, and actually, one of the companies that I was working at, they were paying for my accountancy qualification, and that stopped when I got to my third year, which they were supposed to fund. So I think it's again, it's going to be difficult. I wasn't in it in the golfing sense at that time, but I know from the impact that it had from my professional career that I had at the time. I saw how people were struggling and what impact it had. And I think the only thing that I would certainly bear in mind on this occasion that it is a very different type of situation. I think at that time they were using taxpayer money to bail out the banks and these financial associations, whereas this time around, they are bailing out individual people and keeping money in their pockets. So, the hope is that if the economy kickstarts again and everything comes back to where we, some kind of normality, that people will have had enough, sort of help from the government to maintain and hopefully continue to work as they have done.
Yeah, I came to club management in 2007, and then a year later, all of that hit.
Mm.
And I certainly think that the experience that I picked up then, I was working in South Wales at the time. I think the experience that I picked up then and what I saw happen in that little South Wales market will hopefully stand me in good stead now working as a club GM in the Southwest region. I've already said to the guys on the Southwest region WhatsApp, guys, do not let this become a race to the bottom for trying to price war on green fees and that sort of thing, because that's what I witnessed in 2008, 2009, 2010 in South Wales. And what that did was it devalued the value of a round of golf. It devalued a membership. There were golf clubs that even back then were charging maybe £1,000 a year, maybe just under, for their membership, and selling midsummer green fees for £22. Well,
Doesn't make
you only
sense, does it?
to work out how much you devalued the what the perceived value of a round of golf is.
Yeah.
And the noises that we hear from the guys in my current region now are, oh no, we won't do that. And there's some very able people running the clubs in this region. But I do wonder. It only takes one or two, because that's where it started in South Wales. One or two that are in desperate measures and just need money of any description to be able to pay the wages this month. And I wonder then whether it could start that. I think we can sit here at the moment with closed golf courses, and most of us have had at least some of our subs income in, and say this is the line we're going to hold. But I think a lot of us have got some pretty pragmatic decisions to be making moving forward.
I think that's it.
Go on.
So I was going to say, I think in that respect as well, it's not just always the manager's decision in a lot of these golf clubs. You come under pressure from your committee. You're coming under pressure from your finance chair to say, well, where are we? Why have we not making our sort of targets, or why are we not sort of hitting membership targets and everything else? And then you start looking at ways, and often the short-sightedness of thinking in that short-term aspect of, okay, well, let's just drop our prices. The detrimental effect of that and the long-term impact of that for the golf club. I've seen golf clubs do it, and over the last couple of years, even, whereby some really stupid membership offers that they've put in to get some short-term cash into the golf club, but now 18 months down the line, they're even worse off because they've never been able to then increase the price to those people that came on that special offer. They've probably got 100 special offer golfers all paying a different rate. The one sort of the few long-standing members that they had that were their core membership have then ended up leaving because they're so upset with how they've been treated with these special offers and people coming through on a cheap price. So again, I would really encourage the golf clubs to try and make use of any sort of government grants and funding that's available to try and tide them over for short-term cash and make sure that they've got enough to pay those wages, and then hopefully putting in terms of that long-term strategy, this will balance out and you will get that revenue back, but you won't get this revenue back if you start putting stupid membership offers on or selling cheap green fees that aren't going to, they're not going to get your club out of the hole anyway. So, I think it's a really difficult situation, obviously, but hopefully, golf clubs can come together. And I think one thing that, I've seen from this as well is that a lot of golf clubs are starting to communicate a lot more, and a lot of people across the industry are communicating a lot more. And hopefully that will, translate then into a bit of a better strategy across the board. And, me and you were both on the GCMA call earlier, speaking to sort of Jeremy, CEO of England Golf. And the one thing that stuck in my mind from the whole conversation was that he said that in his 40 years in golf, he'd never seen all the associations come together to actually put, some decent guidelines down, or to think about the industry as a whole. And, I just hope that this is really one learning that everyone can take from it, is that we are better together in this situation than, potentially individual clubs going across and doing things that are going to be, have a really negative impact on everyone else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I must say that the interaction and the networks that within golf that I've managed to build up over the years, I mean, they've been beyond priceless to me over the last 5-6 weeks. I've got to say, to be able to go into these weekly or sometimes more frequently than that committee meetings, and when some rumor that XYZ down the road is doing this, you're able to factually say, no, whoever told you that's been misinformed. I spoke to their manager this morning. This is what they're doing. The governing bodies, I think we've had a bit of a mixed bag, personally. That's just my experience. I think the GCMA have been absolutely terrific for the members of the GCMA regionally. I mean, I'm a member of 2 regions myself. The Southwest region has been right on it from day one. I'm a member of the Wales region as well, where I still live. And the last couple of weeks, again, some of the stuff I've taken just from Zoom sessions that have taken 5 minutes, just absolutely invaluable, because none of us have been through this before. So, I think, the more sharing of information and ideas and that sort of thing, the better, really. And it certainly helps when, because we're not the only ones on WhatsApp groups. The members of the clubs that we work in are all alive with rumours of this going on, and this club's doing this and that club's doing that. So sometimes it just helps to be able to see, well, this is the background of why this club has decided to do that. So X club has decided that they're going to run this offer. That's fine, but they've got £1.5 million in the bank.
Yeah.
So they can afford to do whatever offer it is that I'm referring to there. Yeah. If you don't have a huge pot of cash in the bank, maybe you can't afford to do that, and you need to maybe speak to clubs more similar to your own position and try and sort of gauge what they may be doing. There is no right or wrong answer in a lot of these cases, but it's making sure that you're not out there doing something crazy, really, that your members are just going to be able to point at in a future AGM, I think.
Yeah, I think yeah. So one of the real key points that you've raised there, and what you've sort of said, is communication in this time, and communication across, whether it's managers, whether it's from the GCMA, England Golf. I think I would echo what you said about the GCMA. I think their communication through this has been exemplary. To be honest, they've been fantastic, and it's so vital that golf clubs are communicating regularly and good information. And not just to the members, but hopefully if you've got an email list of potential members or golfers that you've built up through the years that have come to the facility, just keep in touch with them and letting them know what's going on at the club, and not just going radio silent, basically. And I think, again, when we are now hopefully looking at potentially reopening and everything like that, we don't know exactly when it's going to be, but communicating those plans to all your stakeholders, whether that is your members, it's your visitors, it's your staff, getting everybody on board, making sure that everybody knows exactly what's to come, and also just stops the rumour mill, like you say, because there's one thing that I certainly don't miss as a club manager is having 10 people a day coming into your office asking you a silly question about some sort of rumour that they've heard from a club from 20 miles away have done this and why aren't we? And it just is a complete drain on your time and resources at the end of the day. So yeah, I think communication and making sure that really keep on top of that, and like I say, particularly as we come out of lockdown and we get courses back open, that communication element is going to be absolutely massive.
Have you got a favourite that you've heard, or maybe from your days as a club manager? Have you got any favourites, the rumours that you've had to quash?
There's been quite. Yeah, I mean,
clients. Or?
Yeah, I'd say, to be honest, there's around where I'm in the northwest, so I literally get wind. I'm on the River Mersey, and I'm a member at Sale Golf Club, and there's the Mersey clubs. There's 5 of them, and I think every single year there is rumours that this club's closing, that club's closing. Probably for the last 12 years that I've been a member there, and they're all still going. So yeah, just sort of shows what it's like, really.
Yeah, I think my favourites would be There was a rumor one club I used to work. The caterers were leaving, and we were becoming a Toby Carvery. And that one really grew legs. I had some very irate emails about that, as though it were a done deal. And I think the other one that started as a result of a tongue-in-cheek comment by a greenkeeper to somebody that he thought knew better, that we were going to install pay display in the car park. And again, that one was around the WhatsApp groups within about half an hour. And it exploded, and it probably cost me 2 days of my life dealing with that one.
That's the way it goes, isn't it? That's the problem with it, yeah.
Amazing. But that's human nature, I guess, isn't it? And with technology nowadays, what was it James O'Brien always says on the radio? It's a liar's got halfway around the world before the truth's got his trousers on, and that was certainly the case in that instance. But yeah, I mean, as you mentioned that webinar that we were on earlier on, what was it, about an hour long? So for those who didn't see it, it was the CEO of England Golf, who, to be fair to him, has only been in post about 4 months, so feel for him there. There's about 320 of us or something like that we're all on there looking for answers. I mean, what did you make of it from your side of the industry's perspective?
Yeah, I think, I think England Golf, they've obviously got a mixed reputation across the industry, I would say. I think that's probably a fair comment. And I feel like sometimes there's a real disconnect between, those that are in those kind of positions and the people on the ground and those club managers and things like that. So, obviously they have the club support network and they're trying to work with managers in that respect and everything else. But, I think it just, for me, it came across that, he spoke very well, and I think he put his points across about England Golf very well, but potentially missed the point as to exactly what golf club managers are going through at the moment and the struggles that they're facing. And I think, it needs to be a little bit more from the ground up with England Golf, and hopefully that, I know they're trying to support clubs, and like I say, I know the club support officers do a fantastic job. I just wonder the feedback that those club support managers get from their clubs that they're looking after, how far up the chain that then filters to guide policy from England Golf, because I think again they collect that fee from all the members of golf clubs, and the rhetoric then comes out that there's elite golf and they've got these championships and they do this, that, and the other. Well, it's great for England Golf, and it's great to have those English golfers at the elite level, but it certainly doesn't do anything to help the golf clubs and the golf club managers of this world. So, but I think also it was, like I say, it was really interesting to see that a lot of these associations across the industry have come together to put together these guidelines for reopening golf and everything else. The guidelines for me, again, I feel I've had a good read through them this afternoon, potentially a little bit sketchy again. I think there's going to be a lot of interpretation there. There's a lot of use of the word consider, and I would really have liked to have seen some very clear instruction as to how many golfers there is per group, making sure that flag sticks are glued into the hole effectively. There should be no considering this, because if we are going to reopen golf and we are going to keep people safe, then we all need to be abiding by the same rules. And it's only going to take one golf club to crowd their members with 200, people at the first tee, for that to spread like wildfire as it has done in the past, and give that golf that negative image that we're always battling against at the end of the day in the wider world. So yeah, I think it was an interesting conversation, but I would probably have liked to have seen them dive into the point a little bit more around the union fees and any plans and structures that they have in place to support clubs around that in this time. I think they were probably a little bit vague, and maybe they've not come up with their exact strategies, so don't want to be pinned down to anything. But I think that's, given the audience that they had, that's where they should have really been taking the conversation with the golf club managers.
Yeah, I don't know if you were tracking the comment section. I had it on my screen. It was quite interesting to track, and I think basically that was the feeling of a lot of people, of basically what you've just said. I mean, from my perspective, I did put a question in there really, which was my biggest question, But there were a million questions in there. So I think Bob Williams, the CEO of GCMA, had a hell of a task trying to chair that, because there were so many questions. So I don't blame him for not asking my one. But the question for me with the whole England golf thing is, there are clubs that you alluded to that rely heavily on those support officers. I've not really used them much in England golf terms, but I know there's some great people over in Wales who do that job for Wales golf. And I would go as far as to say that, they have rescued some golf clubs from closing, those guys, over the years. A couple of them have now gone into club management themselves. Some of them are still in the job up to this day. But for England golf to remove the club support officers from their most needy clubs at a time of the biggest crisis in probably their history as a club, I think that's a decision that really down the road needs a bit of thought, and it needs answers as to why that was deemed appropriate. Really, thankfully, I'm not a club that was relying on them, but some of the smaller clubs that maybe don't have managers and teams of staff, these support officers become like a crutch. And whether that's right or wrong is not really for today's crisis, is it? It's more for let's get through this crisis and then find out why you rely so much on a support officer. I think it's been a mixed bag. Bigger have done very well. I think they've been very front foot. GCMA, as I say, have been excellent. RNA seem to be involved. The PGA, I'm told, are communicating with their members pretty well. Depends on who you speak to. But speakers I find, I'm a proud GCMA member, as most people who know me would know. But I think they've really stepped up through all this, and my hat goes off to them, really. So your career and how you ended up in golf. I've obviously already told the people listening that you've managed 2 golf clubs. You've mentioned one of them because you're still a member there.
Yeah.
I mean, how did that happen? How do you go from financial services into that?
Yeah. It was a bit of a. Sorry, Gareth, go on.
No, you carry on. Yours was more important.
So it was a bit of an unconventional path, I suppose. But I think I like I say, worked in financial service, did a sort of an accountancy qualification, and sort of learned a lot around sort of that kind of area of the business. And it's quite funny, really, because inadvertently picked up a lot of skills along the way to becoming a golf club manager that stood me in really good stead. So it was in 2009 actually, when I was working for the pensions company, that I unfortunately lost my dad. And it was that sort of shock, really, that gave me the sort of the incentive to go and follow my dream, really, and follow my passion, and really cultivate a career in the golf industry. So I'd always really wanted to go to Myerscough College to study golf management. But obviously the lure of the wages of the accounting industry and everything else sort of took over at first. But I went to Myerscough College in 2010, did a golf management degree there. While I was there, I picked up a full-time job as a bar manager. So, again, really, really useful for golf club management. That I could change a barrel, I knew how the bar operated, I knew how to stock take, I knew how F&B works, basically. So, that gave me a really good sort of skill base there as well. And then, sort of coming into the last year of my studies, I picked up a job at Trafford Golf Centre. So at that stage, I was a Category 1 golfer. I was thinking about, potentially going down the route of becoming a PGA pro and becoming a teaching pro. But I really like to compete. I like my Saturday morning medal. I like to get out there and see if I can, sort of put a score together and win a competition. And I knew playing off a handicap as, I was never going to be able to compete at regional pro events or anything like that. So I decided that I would go down the more sort of club management route or into the golf industry that way. And just as I was finishing my studies, I actually became a bookkeeper at Sale Golf Club. And that was my first sort of role, properly in a golf club office, basically. So that was just part-time while I was finishing my studies. And after a few months, finished my studies, and that quickly developed into a club management role then. So it needed a lot of modernisation. That was my main remit. Just to give you an idea of where they were up to, I started in 2012, and they were still doing handwritten purchase and sales ledger, double entry bookkeeping. So they had Sage on the computer, but they weren't particularly using it. They were doing handwritten ledgers still. So that was where the golf club was at in 2012. So, it was then on my sort of shoulders to modernise. So we modernised all the systems. We brought in club systems over. I think we had GC Gold at the time, which didn't really operate in a very good way. So we brought in club systems. We obviously changed the advertising marketing from newspaper advertising done sporadically once a month or once every other month to really sort of proper focus strategies. And we changed the management structure of the business as well. So we went from a 12, 13 person committee down to a 6-person management board. I probably would have liked less, but 6 was a happy medium at the time for the golf club. And then from there I did 4 years at Sale Golf Club. Had some really good success, really, sort of helped the golf club get back towards sort of full membership. And then I took a role at Lee Golf Club. And Lee Golf Club were in a very similar situation to what Sale were when I sort of took over there. And there was, again, a massive need for modernisation, but it was a real challenge, to be honest. It was a real big challenge. I think the first thing that I had to do when I stepped in there was, basically the chairman was the Greens chairman as well, so effectively had 2 votes on the board. So it was in breach of the Articles of Association. So one of the first things that that ended up happening was it was put to him, do you want to be Greens chairman or do you want to be chairman of the board? So that sort of snowballed into me having 4 different chairmen in the space of 9-10 months while I was there. All of them wanted a different job, all of them put a different remit in and everything else. So it was quite a challenge, but again, sort of the one thing that I certainly excelled at there was the marketing and the advertising side of things. And despite the difficulties that we were having, we still managed to get over 90 new members through the door in a sort of 4 or 5 month period that we put that marketing strategy in play. And then that obviously led me on to Albatross to help over 100 clubs now put those kind of strategies in place, basically.
Yeah, I mean, all of this was kind of exploded when I was working down in South Wales, and I guess the pioneer for that in our region would have been Andrew Minty at Langland Bay. Really, I mean, he was club manager of the year, wasn't he? About 4 or 5 years ago now. But he was the sort of trailblazer in our region of that kind of thing, and just using the power of social media and that sort of thing, and email marketing. Because I think some of us had gone down the road already of email marketing, that sort of thing. But I think once social media really exploded, I think Andrew was one of the first to do that. But and then there's some great examples in that region now. But so did you sort of see a bit of a niche there that clubs like the South Wales region weren't doing much, could do so much better, and that's why you wanted to go into that side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from my side of things, I mean, when I was manager at Sale Golf Club, I brought in Albatross when I was there. So, they've been going for a couple of years before I joined full time, but I really got involved from the very beginning. So I saw how, they were using social media and the way that they were attracting new members to the golf club. And it was a huge part of the success that we had there in generating a lot of extra revenue for the golf club. But for me, realistically, I think the overriding thing was that I've always had a real passion for golf, and I've always wanted to get out there in the industry and use whatever expertise that I've got to help golf clubs to improve and do better. And I don't want to see the industry just struggling along, limping along. Golf clubs closing here, there, and everywhere. I really want to see the golf industry doing a lot better. And one of the big things around that is how we promote the game and how we promote individual golf clubs and everything else. So it sort of really was a perfect fit for me, particularly at the time. It was a great offer from Albatross to come on board and, really use those skills that I'd built as a club manager, built the network that I'd, sort of used the network that I'd built as well over those few years of doing that. And that's exactly the way it's panned out. Like I say, I've probably worked with over 100 golf clubs over the last sort of 2.5 years, and even now there's still tons of stuff that golf clubs could be doing in the digital arena. We realistically, we put some great systems in place, but it's still only scratching the surface because of a lot of golf clubs have budget constraints. They can only do so much with the revenue that they generate, and we just try and absolutely maximise that and put the plans in place that are going to maximise that for the golf club. So, any golf club that isn't using social media advertising or having to play around with Facebook ads and things like that, you can spend as little as a tenner and get results from it, and get better results than you would if you're spending 500 quid in a newspaper. So, social media advertising is just, when you talk about digital marketing, social media advertising is probably 1/10 or 1/12 of what you actually want to be doing. You mentioned email marketing as certainly as part of that. Your website is part of that, your SEO. There's so many different strands of it that you need to all marry in and tie in together to make sure that you've got, because at the end of the day, if people see you on social media but then they can't book a tea time online, or they can't get to communicate with someone, or there's no further information for them, then you're wasting your time with social media. You need to back it up with the other areas as well.
Yeah. I mean, you obviously, as an expert, but also having worked on the other side, I mean, what are the biggest mistakes you see clubs and golf facilities and that sort of thing making purely on a social media level?
Yeah, I think, again, one of the big problems is with social media, and particularly if we focus on Facebook in particular, because I think that is one of it's probably the key platform for golf clubs because of the age demographic that's on there. You're looking at, I think the average age on there is now into the 30s, mid-30s, but there's a lot of 40, 50, 60-year-olds and plus on Facebook. So it's a great demographic for golf to be able to target. And the problem is that it changes so quickly, and the algorithms that they put in place, and I think particularly after sort of the Cambridge Analytica scandal that came out a couple of years ago, Facebook went from a really driven business model to a more customer experience and customers focused model, but also at the same time being more socially responsible with the things that were coming onto their platform. So, fake news is one of the probably a buzzword across a lot of places now. And it is, Facebook were really, hounded for the spread of fake news and putting these things in front of people that were shaping the way that they were thinking about everything, politics, religion, whatever it might be. Facebook was at the forefront of that through these scandals. So one of the big changes that they made at that time was they took a big shift away from content advertising. So now, a lot of golf clubs and a lot of businesses at the time had spent years building up a huge following on their social media pages, particularly Facebook. How many likes can we get? How many followers can we get? Because if we get loads of likes and followers, then we can put content out there. It's free of charge. It'll get seen by all of them, and we can generate a return from it. The huge change, particularly over the last sort of 12, 18 months, has been that most golf clubs will have seen this now, that when they post a nice picture on Facebook, or if they post particularly if they put a sales post on Facebook, you're lucky if it reaches 5% of your followers. So if you've got 1,000 followers on your Facebook page, you're lucky if 50 of them are going to see that. I think the chances are, particularly with a sales post that isn't going to get interaction like likes and shares and comments, it just doesn't go anywhere. And obviously, Facebook are taking the stance of being socially responsible for that, but ultimately there's a big business decision in that they want people paying to get in front of those target audiences. So I think one of the big things that I see from golf clubs in particular is wasting a lot of time on producing content and trying to produce content on a daily basis. You'd be much better off just posting once or twice a week on there, something that's engaging about your members and using your members' community. And then if you want to post a sales message, or if you want something to publish a little bit wider into the golfing community, use the simple boost post button on there, or if you're a bit more advanced, go into the Facebook ad side of things and put a little bit of budget behind it. Because that sales post that would reach 50 people, if you don't, can easily reach 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 highly engaged golfers in your area for £20, £25 a time. And if you think about, your time as a manager or the time of your staff, taking the time to actually think about social media content and what you're posting on there each day and trying to keep it fresh and original and everything like that, it still has its place, But if you have a lot of time and a lot of resource to do it, most golf clubs don't have that. Most golf club managers don't have that. I didn't have that as a golf club manager, which is why I outsourced it at the end of the day. But, you know, just use your time a little bit more wisely. Go into those paid advertising. There's tons of courses out there. You can get on YouTube and watch a 10-minute video of how to do it, and you can see how to boost a post into your local golfing audience. And you will see results from it. You will see a lot bigger reach, and hopefully, if you can set some things up in the background, you actually convert them into sales as well.
Yeah. I mean, I did some training with a social media person, but it was a few years ago now. It was before the controversy that you were talking about. And the sort of the teachings of the time were to make Facebook almost the TV channel of your golf club. So to tell the story of what's going on. So here's the ladies doing this, and here's the seniors doing that, and the juniors here, as long as you're allowed to take the photos of the juniors and that sort of thing. So would you suggest that maybe the changing in the algorithms has just taken us away from that now, maybe?
A little bit, but I think in that respect, what that is that's engaging with your core community that are on your Facebook page anyway. So, the most engaged golfers that are following your page are most likely to be your own members anyway. So, they're ones that are going to be on there looking for those kind of things. So, if they see Jeff, the member that's had a hole-in-one, and they've got a nice picture of him on there and a bit of a story about his hole-in-one, that will get quite a bit of interaction. People like that. People comment on it saying, congratulations, Jeff, and stuff like that. And that will, have an impact, but it's not going to be an impact that is then automatically going to translate into sales of green fee payers or new members. But in terms of new members, it can have a longer term impact that if they see your Facebook page and see the community that you've built, they might want to be part of that community from that content that you've been putting on there. So, I think if you are still doing content and the content that you do put on there should definitely be focused around those type of things rather than trying to sell all the time, or, even things like I see so many clubs that are just so lazy posting a course update every single day on there, like, course open, just copy and paste it every single day onto Facebook, and that's our content for the day.
What do you think of that? What do you think of that type of thing? We've just had a horrendously wet winter. I mean, course open. Surely that's counterproductive when the message needs to change to course closed, because you painted yourself into the corner of members will now rely on Twitter or Facebook for that information, and you're now telling the world, trolley ban, 9 holes closed, temporary greens. I mean, can that be more bad than good? Maybe. I'm no expert, but.
No, I think you're exactly right. I think it's it is all about setting expectations for your customers at the end of the day, isn't it? And if you're going to do it, you've got to commit to it, and you've got to keep it regularly updated every single day, because, like you say, that one day where you don't update it and the course is closed, if you have 10 members turn up in the car park that don't know because they've not seen it on social media, that they'll be all over you and they'll be wasting your time complaining when a simple post could have rectified that. So what I always used to do when I was a manager basically was I would put out a change. So it would basically be this is our course status, and a ticker on the website or whatever it might be. Never really used to post it too much on social media. Maybe I'd give it to the green staff to do on Twitter if there was a change, but only if there was a change in the actual. So, I think it's probably more relevant in winter, like you say, when, things may be changing in terms of how many temporary greens are on, or, course conditions, buggy bans, trolley bans, whatever it might be. Things might be changing a little bit quicker. But yeah, I think, if you commit to doing it every day, you have to do it every day, and you have to do it at the same time every day so people can check.
Yeah. I mean, we where I work now, we operate where the greenkeepers update the website every day. Even in the summer when it's a lovely sunny day and we haven't closed for 6 months. But I've disabled that thing you can do on Intelligent Golf where it tweets it automatically. I like our members now. We're Intelligent Golf customers now. I like them to get their information from there, because if you have a one-stop shop for everything that they're going to need, Because I mean, that was one of the problems that I had in a couple of clubs that I work for, is that you go in and all the platforms in isolation are perfectly good. I mean, you've mentioned Club Systems. I mean, perfectly good at what they do. But you find that you have 4 or 5 different systems and 4 or 5 different databases. So a new member comes in and you've got to update the diary database, the membership database, this website for that website for that.
I've been there, Gareth, believe me.
yeah, it's good fun, isn't it? Particularly in the smaller clubs where you maybe don't have teams of staff that can help you with that.
Yeah.
But no, it's an interesting one for me because it's not something I've done any formal training on for years now, and it was all about make this your TV channel. So I mean that'll certainly help me moving forward. I mean I'm lucky enough to have someone in my club that works 16 hours a week, supposed to be just on marketing. She'll laugh when she sees me say just marketing, but in terms of focusing what we spend our time on, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with working with golf clubs, do you see a trend of, are you predominantly working with them for looking for members, or are you predominantly a visitor, or is there a pretty even spread? Because I mean, the CEO of England Golf there today in the webcast that we were on was asked for quite a few taxing questions, wasn't he, about nomadic golfers and that sort of thing. It's obviously a huge market, but what are the clubs using, the likes of Albatross for?
Yeah, I think it is a bit of a spread across the board, really. I think membership is obviously a key driver for most golf clubs. Particularly the private member clubs and the traditional type of clubs that are out there. There's very few clubs that are in that fortunate position whereby they've got that waiting list and everything else. So, I think there's been. I think one thing of note that we have certainly noticed over the last sort of probably 6 months, 6 to 12 months, is there's a lot more sort of high-profile member clubs coming into this kind of thinking now. So, from what I've seen across the years working in the industry, and what I've noticed is that the issues that probably were born out of that 2008 recession that we were talking about, and the dip in membership and everything else, has slowly climbed the golfing ladder. So, Municipal was probably the first ones to suffer from it, and then private member clubs dropped their fees, so then that became more accessible, which meant that membership prices weren't as exclusive as they were. So now we're getting to the stage, I think, where even top 100 golf clubs are having to actively and proactively go out there and seek membership and seek new members coming into their club. And we're working with clubs that have got $2.5 grand joining fee. They're not looking for 100 members at a desperate price to come through the door, but they're probably reacting to what most golf clubs didn't react to 10 years ago, whereby they'd lost 25, 30, and they're thinking, right, we need to get on top of this now. We need to get back to that stage of having the waiting list so that we don't go down that slippery slope of losing potentially hundreds of members. So, I think membership is still very much a focus for the vast majority of clubs that we work with. Getting to golf schemes are becoming very popular as well, because I think, there's becoming a better business model for those, for clubs to actually be able to generate revenue from them. And it's not just a nice to have, or not something that they feel like they should be doing. I think, there's potential for a revenue model behind that as well. Green fees, obviously, particularly in the summer months, and hopefully we get some nice weather when we come out of lockdown and demand will be high. Hopefully we can keep prices a little bit higher, with that demand being a bit higher as well. Yeah, exactly. So, we have that side of it as well. But there's everything. Golf clubs are trying to generate revenue in so many different ways at the moment. So, obviously weddings and events has become part and parcel of a lot of golf clubs trying to utilise their clubhouse in a better way. Obviously causes a few issues with your existing members, and this is my club, I don't want people in here on a Saturday. Well, we'll put your fees up 200 quid. I'm sure someone will go, yeah, well, that's fine, do it for me. But it's not viable. It's not what's going to happen for most of your members. So things like that are certainly, sort of happening. And even things like corporate membership as well. I think, corporate membership probably, again, took a massive hit in 2008 and has never really recovered. But I think one of the main reasons it's not really recovered is because golf clubs haven't innovated with that product. They're still offering, well, you can have a corporate membership, you can have a 4-ball a day and it's $3 grand. that's the option. If you can build in things like T sponsorship, if you can build in things like preferential rates on a golf day, it can be discounted buggy hire, whatever, make them a member of a club, and maybe even just have like a menu for them to choose from as to how they want to see it. So, businesses, there's few businesses now that are going to be in a position to say, oh, we'll just spend $3,000 on golf. They're probably going to want a bit of a return on investment from that sort of investment. So, like I say, things like sponsorship, maybe even having something on your members' emails, like a footer on each email that's got your partners or your sponsors, links to their websites, things like that. That will help you to be able to bring in those corporate partners. So yeah, I think it's definitely there's a focus on membership. Membership is still the driver. Membership's still the backbone of probably the golf industry, really, particularly when you think about what we discussed with England Golf before. Without golf club membership, they wouldn't exist. So, I think it's interesting what they're doing with Nomadic Golf, and I think I'm probably one of the few people, I suspect, across the industry that sees a bit of merit in what they're doing with Nomadic Golfers and potentially looking to bring them in to a bit more of an engaged system. But I think where they've really fallen down is that golf clubs feel like it's a bit sort of under wraps. They've not really seen much about it. They don't really know the ins and outs of what's going to happen. And I think that's the big downfall from England Golf side. I don't think the actual initiative itself is that bad from someone that tries to communicate with those golfers on the fringes on a daily basis. I see the value in it, but I think the way that they've gone about it probably could have been better.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think in that argument, that do we bring nomadic golfers in and allow them to have a handicap and that sort of thing? Because that's one of the big things that regular golfers. That's what us clubs will tell them, is that they get an official handicap. So if England Golf hand out official handicaps for a small fee without needing to be a member of a club, of course the clubs are going to squeal about that. I think that's inevitable, and I'm sure when England Golf first thought that, they must have realised that. I don't think they're daft. So it's just about them managing
it comes back to communication again, though, doesn't it? Because if they'd have communicated that and they'd done proper communication from the very start, if they'd have opened up to golf clubs and said, look, this is what we're thinking about, but here's the reasons why we feel that we have to do it, and we want to have an open conversation, then golf clubs will probably be a little bit more amenable to it. But it almost feels like now that it's being forced upon them without them, sort of really understanding what's going on. And you only have to look at what's going on with Scottish golf at the moment to understand that that process does not work. You know what I mean? And they're in complete tatters at the minute because of the way they've gone about it. And it's just, I think they could have handled it in a much better way, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most interesting things that you said there actually to me is that you've now got potentially people in the top 100 courses that are having to push for membership. I mean, I think back to my time starting in golf. I came from leisure background where I had £1,500 a week marketing budget. Think of that. Golf clubs haven't got that a year, some of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
£1,500 a week marketing budget, and I sort of came in and. I mean, the club I worked for at the time didn't know how many members they had. And it's a very good golf club, very good golf course. So, but it sort of got to the point where I always remember the meeting where the captain of the day came to a committee meeting and produced from his back pocket a copy of, I think it was something like the South Wales Golfer, which was probably the only publication that I would pay to have an advert in because it always used to bring very good numbers, and sort of opened it and put it on the committee table and said, look at this advert for our membership. It leaps off the page, which he meant in a derogatory way, to which I replied, thank you very much. Because I was quite pleased with that assessment, well, in a what is essentially a free paper full of adverts, if you're telling me mine jumps off the page, I'm delighted with that, thank you.
Yeah.
But it was just he was a very intelligent guy and loved his club dearly. He was just, I think he was almost appalled to think that his club needed to now advertise.
Yeah.
You know, we are this great club. We've never needed to advertise before, which was true, absolutely true, and it is a great club. But I always remember that meeting fondly, really, because when you now wind the clock forward, maybe 12, 13 years later, and you're telling me top 100 clubs are potentially engaging with companies like yourself. I mean, I'm actually pleased to see that's the case, really, that we're professionalising ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's it. I think, again, golf club management 10 years ago was probably a lot different to what it is now. There is a lot of people entering this industry and becoming managers of golf clubs as a full profession. It's not a hobby. It's not a snooze after they've retired as an accountant or a lawyer or whatever. It's a proper profession now, and people are wanting to drive the golf industry forward, and people are actively working on the ground to do that within their individual clubs. And I think, when you mentioned, you asked me the question earlier about one of the big mistakes that I see, and it is in golf clubs, it's naivety, and it's more naivety again from those committee members and people on the board, or maybe they just don't even want to engage with the thought, like you say, that their golf club has to be a bit more proactive and actually has to get out there and advertise. Because I've walked into some golf clubs where they are really, really struggling. They are really looking to bring in 100 members, 150 members to get back to where they were. And they're still saying, well, yeah, but we need to do it sympathetically. We can't upset our existing members with our advertising and this, that, and the other. And I appreciate there's a balancing act with all of these things, and particularly when you're in a members club, everything has to be balanced against the impact to your main customers, which is your members. But at the same time, if you're not proactive and you're not doing these things and you're not putting the golf club's name out there, then that hole only gets bigger and bigger. If you just continue to sit there expecting golfers to walk down the drive because of the reputation the club had 20 years ago, you're not going to get very far.
Yes, and I remember back in that club, it like I keep saying, it is a top course, it is a top club in the region, and actually what we found was when all we had to do, we didn't need to put any promotions or anything like that in. It was a club that was well respected enough, and people thought highly enough of it, that all we had to do was tell the golfing public that memberships are available, and that was it. No discounts, no dropping of joining fees, nothing. It was enough because the reputation of the club. But the reputation of the club was so good that people assumed we were full.
Yeah.
So they didn't apply.
Exactly.
Amazing. I think a lot of clubs suffer from that because people of my age, you can have a guess at how much that is, but people of my age, when I was a junior golfer, I had to wait 3 years to get in as a junior at St. Mellons Golf Club where I play. I'm still a member there now, but I had to wait 3 years on a waiting list just to be able to come in and learn how to play the game. So now I'm an adult. That's my perception of golf clubs. Still, if I didn't work in golf, I would still see these places as these sort of mythical places that you're lucky to get into because that's what I was brought up with.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I always remember from when I was a club manager was, when I was at Lee, it had that reputation. It was, it needed members, it needed people coming down, we needed revenue, but nobody, even within the local village, knew that they could actually come and play. It was always seen as a closed shop. You had to be a member, this, that, and the other. So one of the things that we actually did was we actually went down to sort of like the local fair on the park, basically. We paid for a pitch. We went down on Bank Holiday Monday in May or whatever it was, and we actually spoke to people in the village about our facility and what we had and everything like that. And the amount of people that came up to me that were golfers as well that said, didn't think we could come and play your place. We go down the road and play somewhere else all the time. And I'm thinking, Christ, it's 25 quid a round at the moment because we're trying to get people through the door. And, you're driving past us every time thinking I can't even step foot on the premises. So, and that's another way in terms of using digital in particular to break down those barriers. I think there's still that stereotype of golf clubs being very stuffy and, people are scared to pick up the phone because they don't know who they're going to get on the other end of the phone. They don't know if they're going to be rude to them. They don't know if they're going to be welcome. By using those social media platforms to show that you have a friendly community, you are communicating with people, you are reaching out into the local sort of environment. then you can break down those barriers without even speaking to people. Really,
Yeah.
it's just that they know that you're a friendly place and they can come and see you before picking up the phone or walking on your premises.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you've obviously worked across the golf industry now. I mean, you've got a good base of knowledge there. I mean, I think that's one of the great things about you, really. If you were going to engage with you now, is when you're back working with Albatross, is that I am quite critical of people who work maybe in the wider golf industry that post quite a lot of things, telling golf clubs what they need and should be doing, having never worked a day in them.
Yeah.
Because I think that sometimes is where we as members, I'm a member of a club myself, as I said, where we fall down. We haven't got the first idea of what actually goes on day to day in these clubs.
Yeah.
You've got that background.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely invaluable. So I think Albatross probably made a wise move there. But few questions at the end. I gave you a little bit of warning before we came live on this on this recording. So few questions just for yourself, just a bit of fun at the end, really, because we've had a good chat. Your favourite golf course, and being a good golfer, I'm sure you've been on a lot with championships and that sort of thing. What would be your number one favourite that you've played?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, particularly over the last 12 months, really, been looking to play some cracking courses like Swinley Forest, Hillside, Ardglass in Ireland, phenomenal golf course. Really enjoyed playing there a couple of times. But one that I did play was when I was on holiday in Madeira. I played at a golf club called Paliero. So that is well worth looking at. It's literally right on the cliff top of Madeira. So pretty much every single hole looks down over Funchal, which is the city centre or whatever, and everything else. And it was just another level. I think they've played the Madeira Island Open there a few times and stuff like that. But I'd encourage people to have a look at that. It's an absolutely phenomenal golf course.
You played much overseas then?
Well, I always try and sneak one round in every time I go on holiday, so I try and get one past the misses. So played a few. I mean, I've got a cousin that lives in Spain, which is fortunate. So I've played quite a few around sort of Malaga and Costa del Sol, around that area. I've played in Florida a couple of times, a place called Southern Dunes, which was really nice. Just sort of everywhere I go, really, I try and sneak at least one round of golf in.
How did you find that in Florida? I played in Florida 2 years ago, and I couldn't keep hold of the golf club. It was August, and it was so humid. I wouldn't play there again.
No, both times I've been out, it was June both times that I played over there, and literally tried to get one of the first tee times in the morning, sort of like 7:30. I think we're going to Disney that day, so I had to sneak round quickly in the morning. But it wasn't too bad. But I think you got to the back nine and you were like, you needed the beer cart to come round basically, because you just needed to get some hydration.
It did have some floodlit golf when I was there, so I did that, but it was still 80 degrees then. But I always try to find as many people as possible who played Salgados in Portugal. Because, I mean, that's got to be the worst day of my life, that round of golf. It's water on 15 of the 18 holes, and you're playing probably with someone else's golf clubs. Because I'm like you, I don't go on golf holidays. I try and sneak around in. And, oh, my word, it was the worst day of my life. When I came off that golf course, I felt like I needed 3 days of drinking to forget about it. It was awful. Absolutely awful.
Not what you want on holiday either, is it?
No. So if you're ever in the sort of Albufeira area, do not play that golf course unless you've got your A game and your own clubs with you. But if you're looking for a challenge, tell you it's the one.
It's one place that I need to get. I've still never played in the Algarve in Portugal around there, so it's one place I'm desperate to get to soon.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was beautiful. I mean, someone with your sort of skills and background, you'd have been taking photographs every 10 yards that you walked. It was an absolutely beautiful place. But oh my word, it was like, the 17th at Sawgrass on 15 holes. It was unbelievable. So again, I threw this one on you just before we pressed record. So dinner party, 5 guests plus yourself, anyone from history, dead or alive. who are you inviting? Who's coming
Yeah,
along?
I tried to have a long think about this because it does tell you a lot about you as a person, doesn't it? I suppose.
Pressure, isn't it?
Yeah. So I did think, I would, given that I am such a mad golfer and keen on golf, I would have a couple of golfers there or people from the industry. So I would certainly have Seve, but I would also have Billy Foster because I think he would provide the entertainment from all his tour stories and everything else. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. I think could have a couple of people from the business world. So I've been reading a few books, but Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, probably the most successful book of all time. And someone like Bill Gates, maybe someone like you could, he'd be a bit boring, I suspect, but you could pick his brains about anything. And the last one, I'd have my dad.
Very good, very good. It's an even split whenever I ask people that, is, whether they have someone that actually is in their life or was in their life, that type of thing. It's interesting, that we'd sit there with Eric Cantona, but we've forgotten about our mum that maybe passed away 5 years ago or something like that. Yeah, but well, I'm giving my own away there, aren't I? But, yeah. So, I mean, final question, really. I mean, apart from obviously this new podcast, because you're one of the first that I've spoken to since I've sort of started down this road. As I said to you, really, my whole thinking was, this chat that we've had today is the type of chat that I've had with club managers and, salesmen and professionals and that sort of thing for 15 years now. And quite often I've sort of got into the conversation and sometimes written some notes out even and thought, I must remember that he said. And then just got into thinking, blimey, other people could probably have got something out of that chat. Sometimes maybe not, just inane drivel sometimes. But, that was the whole point. So apart from this podcast, any other sort of podcasts, particularly industry or business-wise, that you kind of listen to, you like, that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I am a little bit of a podcast listener. I do a lot of traveling around, so sometimes I do get a bit bored of the radio or whatever. So, I mean, for me, again, like, my other passion really, I suppose, is that sort of business side of things. So, I regularly listen to a podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire, which is a really good podcast about, it's not just about sort of business, but it's obviously about sort of self-development and personal development and things like that. In terms of golf, I quite like the Mind Factor from Carl Morris. A lot about sort of psychology, and again, it's not always about sort of the ins and outs of golf and stuff like that, but some really interesting stuff on there in terms of how you can improve your game, but also just how you can improve your mentality, really. So I think those are the two I would certainly recommend. They're the two that I've listened to the most.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, mentality-wise, I mean, that is a big part of this game that we all love, isn't it? And it's probably the bit that we spend absolutely no time on whatsoever.
Yeah,
definitely. And I just, certainly myself with my own limited golfing experience, mentality, not sort of dwelling on the bad shot that you've just hit and that sort of thing. I mean, it's endless information, isn't it? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's so difficult, particularly for mid-teen handicappers like me. But I don't know if you've listened to it, but I'll make a recommendation to you. I don't know if you've listened to any of the Golf Club Talk UK ones.
Yeah, I have.
My friend, Eddie and Leighton, who were sort of, when they started Golf Club Talk UK, that was really sort of got me into thinking, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Yeah. They're obviously very knowledgeable guys from the industry. They've been in a long time, like myself, really. But it was sometimes it's just not knowing how to start these things off, and I would recommend their podcast to anyone that's Golf Club Talk UK. And
I'd totally agree with that. I've listened to quite a few of those again on the travels, and I think, like you said there, there's a few things, isn't there? But just get on and do it. Get on, have a crack, see how you get on. Like you say, this is one of your first ones. You've done really, really good job putting all this together and getting it going. And that's ultimately what you need. You need to take that first step of anything you do at the end of the day. So.
If people get something from it that they can use, terrific. If not, then they can just press stop, can't they, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all remains to say, really. Thanks very much for joining me. It's been a good chat. I've enjoyed it. I mean, we probably could have gone on for hours, especially if we had a pint in front of us. But I'm desperately trying to stay away from drinking at home during this lockdown, or things could really go south for me. And unfortunately for me now, it's back to the day job. This was my lunch break. So wish you well, and
Yeah,
when you're back on board working, which hopefully won't be too far away, I'm sure there'll be lots of people looking to get in touch. I will put the information where they can contact you, that sort of thing, a bit of info about your history, just in the bio underneath this if you're watching it on YouTube, and in the notes if you're listening to it on podcast. So thanks for joining me, and I'm sure we'll have you back on again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. Much appreciated. Good talk.
Thanks very much.